and all shall be well. And in all manner of things, all shall be well. We have betrayed love in one way or another a whole lot more than once. The promise of the vision is that whatever happens, however it turns out, the love of God will prevail. Julian of Norwich, sometimes referred to as Dame Julian, was a Christian mystic and anchoress, think female monk, who lived in the 14th century in the city of Norwich, England. When she was 30 years old, she became gravely ill and was thought to be dying. A priest was sent for, and last rites were administered. During the course of the last rites, Julian had 15 visions, or what she would later call showings, in which she encountered Jesus, who spoke to her mainly about love. The next day she had a 16th and final vision. She recovered and lived at least another 30 or maybe even more years. Later in her life, she wrote 2 accounts of her visions, a vision of a devout woman and a revelation of love. In the 13th showing, Jesus brings to her the message, all shall be well, and all shall be well, and in all manner of things all shall be well. It is important, I think, to put that message in the context of what was happening in Dame Julian's world. The visions occurred in 1372 or 73. The bubonic plague, commonly known as the Black Death, raged through the world from 1347 to 1352. After that, for several decades, localized eruptions occurred off and on. Estimates are that at least 25 million and maybe as many as 200 million people died. Entire villages throughout England were wiped out. The city of Norwich, second only to London in size and commercial importance, lost between 1/3 and 2/3 of its population. It isn't known for sure, but it is not unlikely that Julian's illness was the plague. It was a time of religious upheaval in England. John Wycliffe was challenging the power and practice of the church. Currents were swirling that would eventually lead to the Reformation across Europe. In Norwich, the controversy became violent, with battles being fought and so-called heretics being burned at the stake. All shall be well, and all shall be well, and in all manner of things all shall be well. I want to make a distinction between hope and wishful thinking. We are not so precise in our use of language, and the words hope and wish are often interchangeable. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I want to pull them apart for the moment, if for no other reason than to illustrate an important point. Wishing or wishful thinking is wanting things to happen the way I want them to happen. I wish I would win the lottery. I wish for everything to turn out okay. Dame Julian was not suggesting a promise that everything would be okay. Quite the contrary. Everything was far from okay. There was very little, if anything, that was okay. When you think about it, there's a kind of spiritual arrogance in the assumption that any of us would know what okay looks like. Rather than being okay, it would be the way I want it to be, whether that's okay or not. The promise of the vision is that whatever happens, however it turns out, the love of God will prevail. The promise is that love cannot be defeated. Love can be denied. It can be perverted and twisted into something other than love, some hideous disfigurement of love. Love can be ignored. All sorts of terrible things can and do happen. But in an ultimate sense, however you want to define ultimate, Love can define my life. Love has the power to redeem, to transform whatever comes to be. In the end, and here I mean all the ends that we experience in a lifetime, not just the finality of death. In the end, all will be well. My life cannot be meaningless. All will be well. That is hope. The Bible refers to it as a sure and certain hope. Of course, it's not that simple. I am subject to fear and to doubt that leads to fear. I often find it easier to trust myself rather than something that is beyond me. I am quick to believe in the efficacy of violence. Those of us who are on the right side of whatever the battle may be can make everything okay if we can find some way to coerce those on the other side. That is the way of the world, and it never really works. Coercion is always violent in some sense. One person or one people will force their will upon others. One of the clearest lessons in history is that violence always begets violence. Wars can and do produce winners and losers. One side wins, becomes the dominant side. The losers become the suppressed and the oppressed. Every war contains the seeds of the next war. Scott Peck, the author of The Road Less Traveled, spoke of a resolute setting of the heart. I think of it as making a decision, but doing so at a significant level. I can decide to live my life trusting in love. I can choose hope. I may not be successful all the time. In truth, I may never be totally successful. But the decision, the resolute setting of the heart, is the first and most important step. The tragedy of Judas was not the betrayal of Jesus, as terrible as that may have been. However you want to think about the story, as empirical, literal truth, or something beyond that, Judas carries all our betrayals. I remember a sermon I heard as a teenager. I don't remember much about it other than one image. The preacher leaned across the pulpit and stretched out his arm with his palm opened and turned upward and said, "I know the weight of 30 pieces of silver." I do too. And I suspect we all do. We have betrayed love in one way or another a whole lot more than once. We have betrayed promises. We have betrayed each other. We have betrayed ourselves. The tragedy of Judas was that he despaired. He couldn't find his way to a place of hope. It wasn't his betrayal. It was what he did with it. Peter betrayed Jesus. He denied him 3 times, afraid for his life, afraid that what was happening to Jesus would happen to him. Peter said he had never seen him. "I do not know him," he said. The difference between Judas and Peter was not which of them was the better man. The difference was that Peter found hope. I don't know what will happen in the future. I don't even know what will happen tomorrow. There's a saying by someone, I know not who, that goes, prophecy is difficult, especially with regard to the future. There are too many decision points that lead to too many paths to be predicted. The temptation is to see history traveling in a straight line because looking backward, it seems to have done so. All the decisions have already been made in the past, but time doesn't really work that way. It moves more like a pendulum, but even that is not an accurate model. There are too many surprises that happen along the way. I am not optimistic about the likelihood that what we have come to think of as an American democracy will survive these times in some kind of recognizable form. The founders of this republic thought of it as an experiment in government. I'm not optimistic about the success of the experiment. I am not optimistic that we as a nation will find the love, will, and courage to bridge the ever widening chasms that separate us. I am not optimistic that one fine morning we will decide to disarm ourselves and try to love and understand people who disagree with us, some of whom we really don't even like. I don't have confidence that things are going to turn out the way I want them to. I am not optimistic, but I am not without hope. All shall be well, and all shall be well, and in all manner of things all shall be well. I choose to believe that. I don't always do well with it. Faith comes and goes. Such is the nature of faith. Some days I do better than others, but I choose to make a resolute setting of my heart. That is a choice only I can make, and it is a choice that no one can take away from me. I am a fan of the 12-step program of Alcoholics Anonymous. There is a philosophy, maybe it's more of an attitude than a philosophy, that runs through the program and the practice of it. Resolutions are never forever. They have to be made every day, one day at a time. Perfection is not a requirement. A recovering alcoholic I know once said to me, "In the morning I look in the bathroom mirror and make the resolution to stay sober for the rest of my life. And the next morning I do it over again." Most of the commitments we make in our lives have to be practiced that way. You would think that a commitment to this or that forever would just have to be made once. It just doesn't work that way. So I don't know what is going to happen or where we are headed. I don't know what we should do. But I do know that the first step for me is to live the rest of my life, however long or short that may be, and in whatever conditions may develop, as a person of hope. And who knows, miracles may happen.